All right, everyone. We are having another one of our animator interviews, and today we have Mr. Anthony Scott. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Well, hello. Nice to meet you all.
Usually the first thing I kind of ask people is, what have you worked on that maybe my students might be familiar with?
Okay, yeah, the first job I ever had was working on the Gumby TV series
Hmm.
and little clay animation. From there, I met Henry Selick, who directed The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Hmm.
Worked with him on that. James and the Giant Peach. I worked at Pixar for a little bit on Toy Story 2
Oh,
and
nice.
Bugs Life. Uh, Went back to stop motion, worked
Hmm.
on Tim Burton's Corpse Bride and Coraline,
Great.
and more recently, Wendell and Wild
Okay.
and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's
Mhm.
a very impressive body of work that you've done. Um,
Thanks.
So the first question I always kind of ask the people I interview, where does your love of animation come from?
Uh, it goes all the way back from when I was a kid. I used to draw little cartoon characters. I really, you know, loved like Charlie Brown and
Mm,
Snoopy and
right.
Garfield and comic strips. And I tried to create my own little comic strip and little comic books. And then eventually I wanted to figure out, well, how do I make them move? And I found a book in the library when I was a little kid. I was probably like 10 years old.
Mhm.
Um, and it was, there were only like two books
Right.
about stop motion animation at the library at the time. This is in
I'm
the
surprised there was
70s.
even that many, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, one of them is I actually went out and bought it on eBay later because it means so much to me.
Sure.
But it was a book about kids animating. So it was,
Oh, nice.
you know, something I could relate to. And
Sure.
they were animating with clay, paper mache, paper
Mm,
cutouts,
nice.
simple wire puppets, nothing too complicated. And they had simple lighting setups. And so I got inspired to try that. The first thing was to try cutout animation. So I was about
Hmm.
11 years old, got my hand on a Super 8 movie camera
Right.
and started to experiment with that. I animated my cartoon characters, create all this artwork, flat artwork. Um, and then, then the older I got interested in other aspects of stop motion,
Mm,
namely like creatures, the
okay.
Seventh Voyage of Sinbad with the
Yeah,
fighting
I just watched that the other
skeletons.
day with my wife. It's great. And all of the Ray
Yeah.
Harryhausen type stuff.
Yeah. The ones with
The Minotaur and the famous one, of course, is the skeletons with the
the
swords. And
skeleton fight was my favorite, but also, the Cyclops was really scary, the
right.
dragon. But then also King Kong, 1933, original
Sure.
King Kong. Once I saw that movie, I really was hooked. And I
Mhm.
even wanted to create my own King Kong movie when I was a kid. So I took
Ah,
a
nice.
G.I. Joe action figure. And back then they were pretty big and they were
Right,
pretty
yeah.
well articulated. And I turned him into a King Kong, and
Did you put
animated
like
him.
carpet on them or something like that? Or
Like fake fur
yeah,
and
yeah.
used
Shag
clay to
carpeting
kind
from
of
the 70s kind of thing.
yeah, like clay, built him up and then put like
Nice.
latex and painted over that and just try to
Oh
do the,
wow. Yeah,
do
yeah.
the best I could with what I had. Very, very, very limited budget, but
Sure.
lots of drive and full of inspiration. So I kept experimenting with different things. I did some live action stuff uh, with my friends,
Mhm.
but I kept coming back to stop motion animation, particularly. I would try, hand drawn as well, but I didn't go that direction for too long.
Okay.
So yeah, so I did that all through, my teenage years, making my own films. And
Nice. Yeah,
uh, d
I always tell people the best. I mean, I'm a teacher and I've been a teacher a long time, and I think there's definitely
yeah,
value in taking courses, but I always sort of 'cause to
yeah,
get the concise knowledge faster than maybe you and I did by playing around. But I always say like there's no substitute for doing your own stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because there's such a
and
great learning experience to be like, okay, I want to do X, but I can't, or I'm not sure how to do it. And then you try different techniques and, some work, some don't, and you kind of learn from that.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And don't be afraid of working within these limitations because I think limitations are good sometimes because there's a lot
Sure.
you can
Yeah.
do with what you have. And to think about, oh, I really want to, I need a blue screen, I need this, or,
Right.
3D camera, or I mean, if you whatever it is that you want to do, you can figure out how to do it and at least learn the basics
Sure.
and also figure out if you even like the process
Right.
because it is a, very laborious process and you have to enjoy it if you want to be an animator and animating
Yeah, you
things
don't get
frame by
animation
frame.
for the money. You
Not
get it
really.
because it's a passion,
Yeah.
it's a desire. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Like you do have, it is very time consuming. So you obviously have to
Yeah.
have a love of it that goes beyond just this is my job and, I'm trying to,
Yeah. I think it's like
paint a
someone
painting.
who paints or makes anything with their hands, they can relate to it because it's you're using your hands, you're using your mind to create something,
Well,
and
I always
animators are
joke
creating movement.
animation, regardless of, stop motion or 2D or 3D. I always joke that like animators like to think that they're sort of a low-level deity, where it's like you
Well,
take this idea and then you make them quote unquote alive, whether you draw it or
yeah.
the model that you position, and you make it real. It's kind of in some ways being like a low-level god, right? Like you're kind of getting them to do
Yeah.
what you want,
I
you know.
mean, yeah, I could see that. I just it is still a lot of fun for me to bring something inanimate to life. So I can
Sure.
see what you're saying. And giving them personality and emotion. And if that emotion the character is feeling translates to the audience, then I feel like I've succeeded.
Mhm.
And it's not an easy thing to do, but there's a lot that goes into that. But
Sure.
besides the animation, you have to have a really good, you know, script. You have to have a really
Mhm.
good, voices for the characters, all that kind of thing. But there's a lot that goes
Of
in, a
course.
lot of collaboration.
Well, so you talk about all sort of the stuff you did as a teenager, and as a child,
Hmm.
as a teenager. Do you go to art school, or
So,
where does post high school take you? Let's just say it like that.
so I would go to art school in the summer when I was a kid
Okay.
growing up, and my
Okay.
mom sent me to. Actually, that's where I found the books because it was right next door to the library.
Okay.
I'm from Flint, Michigan originally, and they had a Flint Institute of Arts. And during the summer, I would take their drawing and painting and arts and crafts and sculpting. So all that kind of stuff I was doing in the mid 70s.
Mhm.
When I was finished with high school, um, there was, no film courses where I was living, but there
Sure.
was one about an hour away in Lansing, Michigan. So I
Okay.
went and I started to take their film program. I went
Okay.
for a year. It was a community college. They even had one animation course. So
Okay.
that's when I decided to do the King Kong project, and I
Hmm.
and I did
Oh,
a
so you get
couple
to
of
actually build it out. Okay, great.
yeah. So that I just spent a year just
Mhm.
making movies, and most of them were animated films. And then, but the real goal was to move to California.
Okay.
So when I was done with that year, I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. I had a relative, my aunt lived out there, so I had a place to land, and
Mhm.
yeah, so I just thought I'll figure out a way to work my way into the industry.
Okay.
And this
Makes
is like
sense.
1984.
Okay.
So it took a while. I had friends that worked at, Lucasfilm or ILM, and I was trying to get in some
Right.
way. Like, how do I get into the work in the mailroom or something like that? That's the
Sure.
classic thing. Nothing was working out. So what I did was, and I was working on these odd jobs
Sure.
trying to support myself. And what I ended up doing was I found an art studio that I could work slash live in.
Okay.
I really wasn't supposed to live in it, but it was an old elementary school that they had turned into these art studios. So it was a lot of space. It was
Was
like
it down in
900.
like the was it down in like Hunters Point?
No, it was in
Oh, okay.
Marin.
Oh, it was in
Back
Marin.
by the Civic Center,
Okay. Oh, okay.
like back there. I don't even know if it exists anymore.
I don't think it
This is
does.
like
Right.
1986. But yeah, 900 square foot, space,
Sure.
really cheap. And so I was able to like not work as much and focus on creating. So at the
Mhm.
time, so this is like 86, special effects makeup was huge back then. There were a lot
Okay.
of creature films, zombie
Right.
films, you
Jim
know,
Henson's kind of characters were very big at that point. Rick
yeah, there
Baker,
were,
maybe.
Rick Baker, Rob Bottin, making all these really amazing creatures. And so I did take a correspondence course with Dick Smith, who's a
Okay.
legendary makeup artist. And I was working on towards that because there wasn't anything stop motion related
Okay.
going on right now, other than some effects at ILM. So I was doing that, and I thought maybe that's where it would take me. So I was
Okay.
sculpting, I was mold making, I was casting things, I was, helping people with their films, like student films and things like that.
Sure.
So that was where I thought my career might go. And then I found out about a Gumby TV series that was happening in Sausalito, California,
Okay.
just
Right.
10 miles from where I was living. So I talked to somebody who looked at my demo reel, who worked in the film business. He said, "You should send them this. This is what they're looking for," because it had
Okay.
all my old films that I made when I was a kid
Right.
and some college stuff. So I sent that in, and they hired me, and I
Okay.
worked on the Gumby TV series for about a year.
Okay.
And from there, I met a lot of different people that I ended up working with, over time on feature films, commercials, TV shows. And some of these people I still work with.
So can you talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit? So is this where you met Selick, Henry Selick to
Yeah. In a way, Henry didn't work on the Gumby series, but he was looking for people to help him with a very short MTV station ID, and it was like 10
Okay.
seconds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
sorry,
so
pause for a second. So for my students who don't know this, because MTV kind of doesn't really exist anymore. MTV in the
yeah,
80s and 90s used to have station bumpers, which was like
yeah.
little animations that would animate the MTV logo at the time. And so some of them would be like 2D, and some of them were stop
Mhm.
motions. That's what he's referring to there as a station bumper.
Yeah. They were really cool.
Yeah, they're really awesome.
They were super creative and lots of different experimental type look to a lot of these things. And some were like very low budget, but they were all really cool. And that's back when MTV was really cool too.
Right.
So yeah, so I worked with Henry along with Tim Hiddle and Eric Layton, two animators at Gumby, and we worked on this little it was called Dollhouse M. And it's these dolls having a tea party.
Okay.
And then one of them opens the window and they all get sucked out the window because there's like, I don't know, it's kind of like they're in an airplane or something, but that kind of like
Yeah.
this force pulls them through and it breaks a hole in the wall and in the shape of an M.
Okay.
So we did that. That was my first job with Henry Selick.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so what year was this roughly? Like late 80s?
87, 88.
And so later
Yeah.
on, for my students, if you've seen the movie Nightmare Before Christmas, very famous stop motion animated movie, um, Henry Selick directed that, right? So then was it kind of like
Yeah.
he kind of reached out to you, or you reached out to him
Yeah.
to see if you could work on that project, or
He reached out to me. I also had worked with him on a couple of commercials,
oh, okay,
between
great.
88 and 90, that time period. Pillsbury Doughboy. He directed several spots
Oh,
for
nice.
that. Um, so that was a lot of fun. And I remember when I animated the Pillsbury Doughboy, I thought, okay, this is the peak of my career. I can't imagine
Sure.
because there
Can't get
were
much
no,
higher than the Pillsbury Doughboy.
I mean, yeah, there were no stop motion feature films being made.
Not in
So
the
I,
80s, no. I mean, there were those like kind of
uh-uh.
early, late 60s, early 70s Christmas ones, but those were like specials. They weren't like.
Yeah, they weren't making those kinds of things anymore. And
Yeah.
so I didn't see a
And
feature
by the
film
80s, special
coming.
effects had gone the way of kind of, I mean, you didn't have the Ray Harryhausen type stuff anymore.
Uh-uh.
It was either becoming computerized or much
Yeah.
more elaborate, like makeup kind of situation where it was
Yeah.
like these, like
Yeah.
Alien from the movie Aliens kind of thing, which you could argue is a puppet, but it's like not in the way that stop motion is or something like that. Like,
Yeah. So if I think back to 1989, working on the Pillsbury Doughboy, that was like a 2 month job.
mhm,
So, I mean, work was sparse for
sure,
animation at that time. I stuck with it because it was my passion. It's what I was interested in. And I was starting to get to know a lot of people in the industry. I didn't predict that there'd be a Tim Burton feature film coming up in a couple of years.
sure, of course.
Um, so that so that was amazing to be asked to work on that film. Once I read the script, I agreed to work on it, and I spent almost 2 years working on that film.
Oh, wow,
hmm
nice.
hmm
So I mean, I think kind of what you're talking about, which I think is useful for my students, is the idea of networking with sort of like-minded people.
hmm
Whereas, like, you had a passion for stop motion. I'm assuming the other people at Gumby had a passion for stop motion. It sounds
hmm
like you met, you admire each other's work. You worked on other stuff because and that's like a good way to kind of keep your foot in the game, so to speak. Is that fair to say? Like, in terms of how to help
Yeah.
you find work and get work is to network with
Yeah.
like-minded, and maybe it's paid and maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a passion project that you're working with someone.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah. Sometimes the budgets are all over the place.
right.
So sometimes you have to take a lower paying gig,
Sure.
but you never know where those are going to lead. So,
Sure.
I try to say yes to most things unless it doesn't make any sense for some reason.
Sure.
um, I mean, I can tell you this. When I was living in that art studio, I was trying to pick up side work. So I was working for a company called Kelly Services, and it was a temp agency.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
And they placed me at ILM as their weekend janitor. So I ended up, this is totally out of my control. I couldn't, even though I was trying to get it into Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic some way, I got placed as a janitor. This is before I got into the film business. So that actually put me in the door in a way, and I made some connections even then. So I always tell people, say yes to things, even though it may not be exactly what you want to do, because you just never know who you're going to meet. It's
Right.
very important to make these connections. I met Tom Sanamod, who builds armatures, while I was, pushing the broom at ILM, and I did
Oh,
that
is he
job for.
also oh no, you were a janitor and he was working there and you met him.
Yeah, he was there on the
Okay.
weekend, and he was working on his own personal project, building an armature for his
Oh,
Mighty
nice.
Joe Young armature. Super friendly guy. And then I ended up working with him on Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. He's a great guy, really. He's got a million stories. But
One
yeah,
of the
so I
best
always tell
stories
people,
about Pixar I have is I interviewed this guy. His name's Craig Good.
oh
And
yeah, he used to be
oh,
my
do you know
neighbor.
Craig Good?
He used to be my neighbor when I first moved to California. We lived in the
Well,
same apartment complex.
you know how he got into Pixar, right?
I'm not
He
sure.
was their like I want to say either the janitor or the doorman or something along
Okay.
those lines. Like he was just doing it as a gig to make money.
Yeah,
This is back in the early 80s when, they were starting out. I'm
yeah,
assuming, they were working on stuff, but I'm sure they weren't making like head over
yeah.
hand over fist money. But it was, basically they asked him to animate because they just needed someone to do it. And it's
They're really
like,
small. Yeah, it was
yeah,
a really
and that's
small
how he got his
company.
start at Pixar was literally he just happened to be, it's one of those sort of right place at the right time kind of situations.
Yeah,
And
when I worked at ILM, they used to be in San Rafael, and Pixar was just down the road. And it was a very
right.
small building, and they were just doing experimental stuff, and Craig was there. But I met Craig he was my neighbor at my apartment complex in 1984, and he drove a little I think it was a Volkswagen Rabbit, and his license plate was Jedi GTI, and I thought
Nice.
he must be a Star Wars fan. So I asked him, I talked to him one day, and he told me we didn't really get to know each other that well, but I knew he worked in the film business or he wanted to at the time.
Right.
Anyway, it's just we ended up working together at Pixar in different departments, but I remember talking to him back then, saying, "Hey, I used to
Well,
be your
I
neighbor."
I think the fact that like I talked to you about two other people that you already know kind of show it's like, and it's not like I didn't even know you knew. There's a guy named Gene Ham I've already interviewed who worked
Yeah,
with me, and I also interviewed Craig, and there's probably some other people I've interviewed who live in the Bay Area who you probably know from a party or
possibly.
whatever. So it's like it's one of these like you kind of you get to know people who know people, and that
Yeah,
is, part of it too is like, sort of networking in the sense of like, just kind of showing up and finding similar interests. So obviously we're both
yeah,
into animation or at least, whatever and obviously you are, and, it all kind of builds from there. And then it's, so, after you do, sorry, I'm on very little sleep as a newborn dad.
Nightmare.
After you did
I
Nightmare
was,
on Christmas,
yeah.
then is that when you kind of move over to Pixar, or what's kind of your career trajectory after
Um,
that?
After that, so we shot Nightmare in San Francisco
Uh-huh.
on at Seventh and Harrison. There used to be an old studio called San Francisco
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Studios,
Yeah, yeah,
and
I
it's
know that.
gone. It's been
Yeah,
demolished, and now it's a school in
sure.
that same spot. But back then, that's where we made the movie, and they were planning to do another movie, James and the Giant Peach.
Right.
But they needed a year of, pre-production and building puppets and sets. So I went off and worked on a TV show called Bump in the Night. And that was,
Oh, yeah, yeah, I do remember that.
yeah, it was on ABC Saturday mornings. And I worked on that show for about 8 months. And then I went back and worked on, at Skellington Productions, I worked on James and Giant Peach. But yeah, Bump in the Night had a little studio in an industrial park in Brisbane.
Okay.
So yeah, there were a few of us that worked on Nightmare that went over to that project.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there were some Gumby people there. So yeah, especially stop motion. It's a very small world. You definitely get to
Sure.
know everybody. And now I'm in Portland, Oregon, which seems to be the stop motion hub in the U.S.
I was
anyway.
about to say, like,
hmm
it's funny because I've interviewed some other stop motion people who also live, and I'm assuming that's because Leica is out there, and is that?
Leica is here. Shadow Machine is here.
Mm,
House Special is here. They do some smaller projects, but I worked with them as well. We did Wendell and Wild here, but
mm,
that was just in a space, a rented, warehouse space,
sure.
for Netflix. hmm
So you work for so you work. Sorry, once again, my brain's a little fried today. You work on Bump of the Night. You go to Pixar. So now we're
Yeah,
in like the
after,
2000s. So what's going on in the 2000s?
yeah, so after James and the Giant Peach, that was like mid 90s. I
Mm,
went to work at Pixar from 97 to 99, and I worked on Toy
mm,
Story 2 and Bug's Life for about 6 months. So
great.
animated on Bug's Life. Most of the time was Toy Story 2, developing, working on it, working with the crew. I was a directing animator actually for
Okay.
that project. And a lot of us were all learning how to use the computer at the time.
Right.
Uh, Basically, Pixar was starting to grow at that point. And so they had a lot of their experienced people working on Bug's Life. They had worked on Toy Story, the first one, but they wanted to do Toy Story 2 as a direct to video. So
Right.
I was hired as part of the team to work on that. So I was trained how to animate, and then I would animate, and I would also like lead all these other
When you
animators.
say
And
trained, you were trained on their 3D proprietary software, right?
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
never even animated on the computer before, but they were willing to train me. So they had a
Sure.
training
Well, I mean, at
program.
that point, no one has.
No,
I mean, as someone who was a teenager in the late 90s, it's like the idea of having, I mean, there were 3D games, but the idea that the average person had a 3D program, that was unheard.
yeah,
I didn't touch 3D graphics until I was in college in the 2000s. And even that was
yeah,
like because I went to a school that was very well known for computer science, that's the reason
hmm
we had all the technology. But the
hmm
average person, especially in the late 90s, would have no real access. I mean, maybe you had Flash. I mean, I
yeah,
worked on Animator and Flash in the late 90s, but you did not have like any form of
right.
for consumer-based 3D program. I mean, so anything that Pixar had was they were the only people who had it. So
Yeah, they had their own. Yeah, I ended up working with Maya later at Tippett Studio in the
sure.
early 2000s. So I did spend a bit more time on the computer in between stop motion projects. After Pixar, I actually left Toy Story 2 a little early. Then I lost my credit as directing animator by doing that. But I wanted to
Wow.
go. Yeah, I got an animator credit,
Nice.
but the reason was, and I had John Lasseter's blessing on this, was to go work with Henry on his next movie, Henry Selick, which was Monkey Bone. It
Oh
was
yeah.
a live action film with some stop motion elements, the
No, I
monkey
remember
and
that.
some other
Yeah.
characters. Yeah. So I was the lead animator on that. So they needed me to come in earlier and test a lot of the monkey puppets mostly, and to work with the DP, Pete Kazacek, figure out how we're going to do it. I'd always wanted to do a film like that where you're marrying live action and stop motion puppets
Mhm.
together, and the interaction we were going for, the monkeys climbing all over Brendan Fraser. So it
Right.
was really complicated stuff, and it was really fun to do it. So I spent about a year doing that, and that's like early 2000, probably 2000, 2001.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah, that time period. Um, and then I went over to Tippett, worked on Evolution. Uh, After that, what did I do? I went back and worked with the Clokies for a while. Art Clokey created Gumby, and his
mhm.
son Joe Clokey was uh, starting to work on some projects. So I worked on a Gumby, like some short interstitials for ABC. And then do you remember Davy and Goliath? The talking dog. It's like the Lutheran
I'd
church
always heard,
sponsored.
I've seen so many references to it, but I never saw the.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
always,
that was on in the 60s and 70s, I think.
yeah, it's one of those like that was, I'm a kid of the 80s, so that was a little bit before my
Okay.
time,
Yeah.
and not as pop culture-y. I mean, Gumby was definitely even in the 80s,
Yeah.
it's well known in the 80s and some other stuff, but not that particular animation. But
Yeah, Davy and Goliath was a story about a boy and his talking dog, and there were all these like religious themes to it, but
that's probably
kids.
why I didn't see it because my
Yeah.
family was not big on overly religious
Yeah.
based
It was the, it was
content.
the only but it was the only thing on animation wise on Sundays, because
Right.
Saturday was the big animation day if you want to watch like
Right.
Scooby-Doo or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Davy and Goliath was on, so I was familiar with it. So anyway, Joe Clokey got a deal with the Lutheran Church to create a special, a
Mm.
Davy and Goliath snowboard Christmas. And there were two
That's
companies
like the
pitching this.
most late 90s, early 2000s thing. You might as well have said like while drinking Surge, like
Yeah.
just like how can we make him extreme? Like
Well, so Joe and I became really good friends, and
uh
we basically there were two companies, us and another company on the East Coast, pitching to the
uh,
Lutheran Church on story ideas. So we actually had to go to
right.
Chicago and pitch these ideas, and we got it. And so very low budget. So this is what I was talking about before. Sometimes you have to work on something on a project, at a lower budget, but
Yeah.
the benefits are smaller crew, more control in some ways. I was able to do multiple things. I animated. I sculpted one of the characters. I sculpted the snowboard and they molded it. What else did I do? I did half the storyboards, but I had a blast doing it. And we did this all on the central coast of California, right by the ocean. It was a beautiful location. So it was kind of away from everything that I was used to. I spent about almost a year doing that. And it was a lot of fun. It was a TV show, so it was limited animation. But during that time, I got a call to come work on another Tim Burton movie, Corpse Bride, in
Mm.
London. So I prepared to move to London, and I spent 2 years working on that film in London, supervising the animation. So that brings us to 2005. And I had also read Henry's script for Coraline around that time, actually earlier, 2003. So when I came back to the States after living in London, I worked on Coraline as an animation supervisor for Leica's first feature film.
Great.
So that's what brought me to Portland originally. I've been back and forth a little bit between here in California and Montreal, but I'm trying to make Portland my home.
Great.
Hmm.
You sound a little bit like some of the VFX guys, where it's like, you talk to VFX people and they're like, every 2 years they have to move to a new country because that's where the tax credits are. And it's like, I
Yes.
feel kind of bad. It's like, I mean, hey, I mean, people's lives or whatever. Some people might like that, but it's just, it can be tough
Yeah.
sometimes. But
It's a great experience to live in another country. I really
sure,
enjoyed living in London. I really enjoyed living in Montreal too.
sure. No,
Uh,
I've been to both places. They're great. It's just,
yeah,
if you have a family,
yeah.
it can be difficult, but yes.
Families, definitely. Yeah, I have friends with families. Luckily, I don't. I have dogs, but that's it.
Sure.
I brought my dogs to London.
Right.
Yeah, in Montreal, I worked on The Little Prince, and that was a really great experience. It was
I didn't get
mostly
to
a
see it,
C.
but it looked really cool. It's one of
Yeah,
those. I,
it's a CG film mostly,
mm,
but we did our stop motion department did all the Little Prince stuff.
mm,
The CG part is a whole different story with this little girl, learning about the Little Prince, and ours are sort of like our sequences are not flashbacks, but like retelling the story of the Little Prince, what happened
sure.
in the book, basically. And
Right.
that was we use paper, costumes, and everything looked like it was made out of paper. So the
Oh,
sets, even though
great.
they were wood, they were covered with paper.
Mm,
So that was a really fun challenge and
right.
experimental, not the usual thing for stop motion.
Um, so let me ask you a couple questions. So, I mean, I think you
Hmm.
gave a great kind of overview of your career and kind of talked about some of the aspects of networking. We can kind of see that. I mean, you
Hmm.
obviously meeting Henry Selick was very influential in your career, and you got to work with him on a lot of projects and some other animation people on projects. Let's say, so my students are usually kind of maybe this is their first semester, or maybe they're, 2 classes in where it's like maybe they took a intro to animation class or I'm teaching it or someone else is
Yeah.
teaching it or and someone says to you, "Hey, I'm really into animation, you know, what advice, I don't know what to do next or what should I do next?" What would your advice be to that student in your opinion?
Uh, it's really important to figure out what you want to specialize in because you can't do everything.
Sure.
Typically on a feature film, especially, they put you in, they give you one position. So an
Mhm.
animator or a puppet
Sure.
maker or a set builder. So you got to decide, what do I enjoy? Do I like to draw storyboards? That's what you'll do. And you
Sure.
focus on that and get really good at it. So yeah, just kind of figure out what you want your focus to be. I mean, it's fine to try other things, but you might gravitate to one and trying to figure out
Sure.
what that is might be a little challenging at first. Um, a lot of people say that they want to direct or whatever. And I never really felt that strongly about that. It was mostly like I really enjoyed the process of creating, bringing something
I
to
think
life.
people
So
like
as
that
simple
because
as that.
they think the director has more power than they really do, especially in more modern Hollywood, where
Yeah,
directors now I think are really just a proxy for the studio's what the studio wants. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, yes, you have the
yeah,
power, but really you're kind of just but yes, yeah, I can kind of understand. It's like if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty of making a character move or interact or whatever, yeah, like
yeah,
directors don't really do that. They may work with the animators and how that scene connects to another
yeah.
scene or something
Hmm.
like that, or but they're not doing it. That's the animator's job. The director's is more to sort of direct or kind of they're kind of like a
Yeah,
project manager really for the entire animation, like where it's like they don't get their hands dirty, the nitty-gritty. They're kind of just making sure all the parts kind of flow while at the same time
yeah.
probably getting yelled at from the studio about budgets and things like that.
I guess it depends who the director is and what their arrangement is with the studio and budget and all that stuff. Yeah, working with Henry Selick, I will say, has been a great experience. He really
Mm.
loves stop motion, has a passion for it, and understands it. Um, yeah, it's one of my favorite things is to get in the editing room and hash out shots with Henry. You know, because I'm
Sure.
like the actor basically, and he's a director. He's telling me what he wants the puppet to do and the character to do, and it's my job to find that in the character and bring it to life. So it's a really fun challenge, and yeah, so yeah, figure out what you want to do. If you like to make things, there's a lot of different departments that are making things. And nowadays, they're getting more and more into digital, a lot of digital
Sure.
printing for the faces.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
That's a whole different department. But
Oh,
yeah, they do that at like that's kind of their main thing, how they
nice.
create the replacement faces. They're all
I didn't
printed
know that.
digitally.
I
Yep.
love learning all these. I love, I mean, what's funny is I always joke that I like to learn stuff that's not relevant to real jobs anymore. Like I love learning
Hmm.
how like the old plating used to work for like Wizard of Oz and like, matte painting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no one does that anymore. But it's like, to
Yeah.
me, it's like interesting how all these movies I grew up with were done. And so I joke that I like learning processes that, but it's also fun to like learn like, oh, I didn't know that now you're sort of they're printing faces onto the which makes sense. I mean, it's a fast,
Hmm.
these days you can get really high quality pretty cheaply and easily, so it makes sense that they would do it that way. But it's interesting.
Mm. It's getting better and better. Yeah, the first Coraline was the first film to do that I know of. So we were experimenting with that when I was working on that film. But yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas was, I would say, the last film I worked on that utilized a lot of those old tricks you're talking about. We
Right.
we didn't do. I think there was like one or two blue screen shots in the entire film. Everything was rear screen projection, front screen
Sure.
projection, multiple exposures,
Just like
back,
just like
just like
Seven
Harryhausen.
Savage of Seven it's the Seven the Voyage of Seven
Seventh Voyages.
yeah,
Yep.
all
Yep. All
sorts
the way
of
back to the day of King Kong, they would do these
King
similar
Kong,
things with the little front screen
the
projection
rear
and
projection.
gags and like I don't think we had any matte paintings, but we did everything was like painted and put up in the background, so there was no blue screen sky that they put in later or anything like that,
Right,
like they
right.
do now, which makes a lot of sense. Digital like makes things a
Sure.
lot easier, especially if you're trying to fly a character, put them on a rod. We couldn't do that. Everything had to be hung on wires, like
Yeah.
thin fishing
Yeah,
line. So anytime you see any characters in the air, that's what we're doing.
sure. Um, so I know you have to go soon, and I
Hmm.
think this has been a great conversation. I think my students have really gotten a lot out of it. As we leave here, this is kind of a question I give to everyone, regardless of what type of animator or special effects person they are. Where do you see the animation world? And you can answer this however you want. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
like based on the industry. It could just be the art form of animation or you know what I mean? Where do you see the world of animation going in the next, say, 10,
Mm.
20 years? So you can answer however you want to answer.
Wow.
There's no wrong
I
answer. It's just whatever you
it
think.
it's hard to really predict, and I've
Sure.
had this question many times. You know, we've had for some reason, stop motion keeps finding a way to exist, even with the advent of computer animation, which we thought would take all the work. It hasn't. Actually, we've done more features since computer animation showed up. Now we have AI to contend with, and it's affecting every job, not just
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
animation. So,
There's a lot of
who,
stuff going on in Hollywood right now. I mean, AI is
yeah,
definitely, of course, one of them. It doesn't help that we're in a
yeah,
recession and
no,
essentially Hollywood is consolidating how many people there are who are willing to spend money. So when you have all of those
yeah,
together,
yeah.
it's unfortunately affecting everybody for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, when I got into the film business, there wasn't a lot going on either. There
Sure.
wasn't, there was no way to predict there were going to be feature films and that I would be able to work in this industry for 35 years.
Sure.
I would say if you got that passion, you got that fire, just do what you love. Figure out what it is that you really are good at and
Mm,
that you think you can get even better at, something that will, you know, um, propel you, in that direction. Because you don't know what the industry is going to do. But if you're
right.
ready, then those opportunities will be available to you when they come up, and just make
Great.
lots of connections. But as far as industry, who knows, man? It's
Right.
right now because of streaming. Theatrical films are in jeopardy. Things are shifting. Things are
Yeah.
changing.
I
But
would
I
say the next
think
5 years in terms of the American film industry as a whole is I'm not really sure how things are going to shake out and
I don't know. Yeah,
a
I don't
lot
know
of
either.
so we'll see. I mean,
Yeah, I'm still excited to be in this business. I recently did a short film called The Littles, and
mhm.
that's being developed as a feature film with Paramount right now. So
Oh, nice,
that's
awesome.
that's another live action stop motion hybrid. So I'm
When is
pretty
that coming
excited.
out? Do you know when that's coming out so my students can check it
It's still in development,
out? Oh, okay.
so there's no green light yet, but
Oh, okay.
we're working on it. So,
Oh, nice.
hmm
All right. So do you, as we kind of finish up here, do you have, if my students wanted to see any of your work or get in touch with
Sure.
you, do you have like websites or social media? You actually have, and I wanted
Yeah.
to promote this for you. You have like a sort of an online resource, your stop motion school. I don't know what you want
Yeah.
to call it, like a
Yeah.
tutorial site or,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about that or
Sure.
just
Yeah.
fine if
Well,
not?
yeah, I have my own website, anthonyscott.net, and on there you can see my demo reel.
Hmm.
I'm on Instagram, anthonyscott.animation,
Hmm.
and stopmotionanimation.com is a website I've owned since 1999. It used to be a
Oh, wow.
message board. It's gone through a lot of different
Iterations.
iterations, and now I'm looking at getting online mentorships for different departments, putting that together on the website. So, people that have gone that want more advanced training
Okay.
in different areas, not just animation. It could be puppet
Okay.
making. It could be.
Okay.
So I'm talking to different friends, see who are interested in being a part of that. So that's something to watch for. But in the
Yeah,
meantime,
yeah.
that website has an archive of all the messages and the discussions that we've had in the past. So you can kind of dig through and find some information there.
Sure.
But yes, that's stopmotionanimation.com.
Great. I'll definitely, this is going to be in a online page, so I can make a link that goes easily
Oh,
for the
cool.
students to check that out. And yeah, when you know
Okay,
more and you want to share with me, I can share it with future classes and all that sort of stuff so that
great.
we get the word out about how this, because like,
Hmm.
yeah, you know, if anyone's interested in stop motion, I mean, or other areas related, you have
Hmm.
shown your pedigree. I mean, I can't think of too many other people I've talked to with a higher pedigree in stop motion. You've worked on basically every major stop motion
Thanks.
movie that I could. I mean, there's a couple more, but like, for the most part, that isn't from Aardman, in the
Yeah, I
last
haven't worked at
couple of
Aardman
years.
yet. Yeah, and I haven't worked on a Wes Anderson film yet.
Sure. No stop
So,
motion mouse, I suppose. I don't know.
yeah,
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for talking with us.
sure. Thank you.